Okay, in this video, just doing a basic character. Uh, yeah, I don't really have a set way of doing figures, but it tends to be a block in the main shapes. As you can see, I blocked in the torso and the hips, and then the head, and then the limbs can just come off there. I'm going for a pretty dynamic pose, so just giving myself a guideline with that flowy line through the middle. I want a piece that has a lot of movement to it, not just a static pose. I'm thinking of kind of a dancer, like somebody dancing with swords. You see later I actually changed that idea, but yeah, just thinking of somebody, a woman in this case, in some sort of action pose of dancing. I'm not using reference. I wouldn't recommend it. It's better you do use reference if you can find reference, but um, I did a lot of life drawing in the past, so it just makes it a bit easier. If you can tell there's a few mistakes with it, but I fix them later. But yeah, definitely when you're starting out, use reference. I mean, you're gonna learn a lot, and it'll probably turn out better in the end. Um, but yeah, if you feel comfortable with your anatomy, it does help. Sometimes it definitely helps to just go in and sketch, try to get the pose, and then go and look for reference. Otherwise, you might be too stuck on the reference and not be able to find what you're looking for. So um, perhaps just use the reference as a guide in that instance. And yeah, this video is at 4 times speed. I can't draw this fast. It'd be cool if I could, but yeah, you want to take your time. I mean, there's no reason to rush it unless your boss tells you to rush it. But if you got the time, take your time. Really think about your ideas and um, think about your options. I tend to draw the figure first and then wrap the clothing around it. Definitely easier for me to understand the form that way, and I can think more about the folds and everything. There's many different approaches to painting anything. I was about to say characters, but it applies to anything really. Um, I don't always do lines like this. A lot of the time I just roughly block it in with the big values and big shapes. But yeah, whatever works for you, whatever you have time to do, and whatever you feel is going to achieve the end result, go for it. I mean, you could have a process that doesn't make any sense to anybody, but it really, if the end result works, then go for it. You can see I'm having a bit of trouble with the face, just the angle of the head and everything. Yeah, I think that's one of my weaknesses. Definitely something I gotta practice more, is drawing heads at an unusual tilt. I tend to draw heads just at normal eye level, as if they're facing you or turned 3/4, and I'm just comfortable with that. So definitely should invest the time, and it probably gives me an idea for another video in drawing heads at different angles. It's very good practice and a good skill to have. Yeah, so you can see I totally rubbed the whole thing out, just erased the whole thing out. The joy of digital is I don't really have any fear when I'm drawing digital. Not that I have fear drawing, but um, definitely makes things easier, yeah, and quicker in changing stuff, and you don't leave a mark. I've gone for a forward facing way, which is much easier for me to draw. Not that I did it only because it was easier to draw, but I ended up actually liking it more. Looked more confronting this way. And yeah, I noticed the torso or the stomach area wasn't long enough. It was too compacted, so I stretched that out a tiny bit. I've noticed more and more in drawing from imagination, I end up with a better piece if or just a better pose and get the proportions right better if I almost draw it out as somewhat of a stick figure or block out the basic proportions. I did that a little bit at the start. If you took notice of the actual process there, but that was, yeah, somewhat of getting to the point. But to me it was enough information for me. But yeah, when you're really trying to figure out a pose, it does save you a lot of time down the end at the end of the road and further into the painting to make sure the proportions are correct, even in just a basic stick figure or gesture. And then when you add detail on top of that, it's going to make it a lot easier. So yeah, that's pretty much my process. Is sketchy at first, and then you begin to add detail. You can see now I've graded down. I've just set the opacity down on my lines and just adding a few little details. Added a little blade on the end of the hair there, but you can see my idea changes a lot. I make it less a less violent character. You can see later on what I'm talking about, but I make a pretty significant change to the character. And just zooming in, getting the face. Usually when people look at your character, they're going to look at the face first. It's just our natural habit is to look at the face first. You know, when we meet people and stuff, we look at their face first. So yeah, you want to get that right, and it's going to, you know, determine the expression and the attitude a lot, just in the face. Tell a lot about the person, tell a lot about their background and their, you know, racial type and things like that. So yeah, I've added a new layer and just sketching on top of the grayed down layer just to clean up the lines and add more details. You'll see a lot of concept artists use the same approach, and I find it a lot easier. You won't find anybody who really goes in and gets perfect lines at the start. And with that grade down layer, you can think more about the basic shape, and then when you draw back on top of it, you can, you know, continually add detail. So it's a very it's a very progressive process. Take it in its steps, and if you want to, if you're working in a professional role, you want to have a pretty set process. That way, you know, you're not going to be wasting your boss's time, you're not going to be wasting your time. And if you have an idea, the end result will be what you're going for, because you know what works. And I found this process for me works definitely every time. So it's not a loose process. It's pretty logical. Just sketching it out. Very similar to, I guess, how you would do comics. Just with, you do the rough pencils, and then the inker comes in and cleans up the lines and everything. So yeah, you can see what I was talking about before. I've gotten rid of the big swords and just made her more of a dancer, just with some big hoops that turn out to be massive kind of symbols. Add the rings later. Yeah, the anatomy is not great. It's just out of my head. So yeah, definitely look at reference if you got reference. I didn't look at any reference for this. Not that I'm bragging or anything. It doesn't make the piece better not to look at reference. It'll make me a better artist because I didn't look at reference. I just didn't feel like looking at reference. I had a pretty good idea in my head of what I wanted to look at, but if you really wanted to be critical and all that, you would notice quite a few problems. But to me, it looked good enough. I was happy with it. Just looking at that, her right arm, just in the hand and wrist area, it looks a bit awkward. Just with the bend there. And perhaps the foreshortening on her left arm is a bit odd. And you could pick out all the things, but not everybody's body is perfect, so could just not making excuses, but not everybody's proportions are ideal, so some bit of an imperfection in your anatomy might even look more realistic than the more idealized anatomy. Yeah, I like it more now with the hoops. Just it looks a bit safer. One reason is I was like, oh, I'd do it with some big blades, that'd be cool. And then I think after the actual sketching